The Truth Girls.
Hi everyone, Truth Girl Sonia here. Well, let's see if we can make some sense of this situation. Parent battles to have baby's gender listed U for unknown. The mother, Cori Koby, who, as they say here, has a mustache and claims to be neither male or female, has been fighting to keep the baby Cyril Atlee's gender off of government records since giving birth last November. Now, they already succeeded in obtaining a health card without sex designation, but they're trying to also get the birth certificate. I'm going to try to sum this up. The mother is a transgender or non-binary person who clearly has gone through a lot and is actually using this situation as a way to do some sort of activism, because they believe that there shouldn't be any gender designation whatsoever on any birth certificate. It's something we should get rid of, just like we got rid of race on the birth certificate. Personally, I don't agree. I think there are a lot of reasons why they named the sex on the identification, but clearly Cori Koby has gone through a lot and wants things to change, and they want to make sure that their child doesn't go through the same thing. And for them, this the solution seems to be to put them as unidentified sex on their identification. 99% of people do identify with the gender that was determined to be theirs at birth. So there's a 99% chance that down the road, all this is going to accomplish is a lot of confusion and paperwork. However, there's one exception where I do agree that putting U for undefined or undetermined would be a very good idea, and that would be if the baby is determined to be intersex. What to do if you have an intersex child? This is a question, and there's no easy answer. Intersex refers to people whose bodies differ from standard male or female, and there are a number of ways in which this can happen. It could be anything from differences on the genetic level to differences in terms of how you respond to the presence of male hormones, to issues with how your adrenals function, and a number of other things. Now, some estimates place it at 1 in 2,000 births. But if you take into consideration all the different types of conditions considered intersex, this applies to about 1 in 100 people in some way or another. So when the child is born with ambiguous genitalia, it's up to the doctor to decide. Now, this is tough because sometimes it's pretty obvious what would be the safe bet, and sometimes it's really not. And like they mentioned here in this article, surgery for intersex, a lot of the time they used to tend to say let's just raise it as a girl, and they would give surgery to make the person look female. The problem with this was it was based on their best guess, and down the road a lot of people who were male said, well, you said I was a girl, you decided to raise me as a girl, but I'm still a boy, and now I feel like I've been mutilated. And even the ones that were female that had alterations made, sometimes they said, I wish you hadn't done this to my body. Sex of rearing. You have to decide which sex or gender you're going to rear this child as. Clinicians aim to choose the gender that carries the best prognosis for reproductive and sexual function, and for which the genitalia and physical appearance can be made to look most normal. It is thought this will ensure a stable gender identity. Although, as it's turned out, that is not always the case. If surgery is required, it is performed as soon as possible and no later than 24 months. So as you see, up until now, if you have a child who's intersex, somebody has to make this decision, and it's going to be a decision that's going to affect them for their whole life. And it's a decision that's made very, very early on. But if you allow to just delay making that decision, you just put U for undetermined, then as the child shows which way they lean, you can later change the documents. Germany actually has already done this. Germany offers a third gender option on birth certificates. Parents can choose undeterminate if the child shows both male and female characteristics. The German High Court, though, later rejected intersex as a third gender category. They don't have a name for it. Unlike on Facebook, where you have 52 choices or whatever, you're either male or female, or it's just undetermined. And Germany is not the only place where they're starting to have some leeway for people who fall outside of the standard. New passports in Australia allow a third gender, which allow travelers to choose indeterminate as their gender without having to undergo surgery as proof of sex change. There is another advantage besides for children that are intersex, as for people who are older who are having some issues with their gender identity. I think it's good to not have to force them into one or the other, so they don't rush into doing something radical like taking hormones and trying to turn into the other gender. Because sometimes maybe in young people they're a little bit confused. So it's not something you want to just take lightly and rush into. India's third gender gets own identity in voter rolls, and also in Pakistan. Pakistan issues first third gender passport for transgender activists. Now I would say this is all very good news for intersex people, especially intersex babies who are going to have their gender decided by someone who can never be 100% sure they're going to make the right decision. I don't think there's any harm in just delaying the decision process for a time. Probably going to save a lot of people a lot of grief. Contrary to what natural news tells you, it's not straightforward XX or XY. There are people who are XY, male, in their genes, but because of androgen insensitivity syndrome, they have a vagina. So at birth, they're said to be female. And most of the time, their brains will match. They will be female. Sometimes the brain doesn't match. Because, you know, the fetus, when originally, it's undifferentiated. Sex differentiation happens depending on genetics and hormones and response to hormones and all these things. And if everything goes in the typical way, it's either going to be female with a female body and a female brain, or it's going to be male with a male body and a male brain. But there are some variations where it's somewhere in between. And if anything goes wrong during that process, it reverts back to female. But depending on how far down the line it was when things went not as planned, you could have more or less parts that match already male or female. It's really not that straightforward, and contrary to what you'll hear, not everyone who has an intersex condition has some kind of horrible chromosomal abnormality and is, you know, intellectually deficient and has a weird looking face or anything like that. It's really just not like that. There is such a thing as intersex that you can identify at birth. There is such a thing as intersex that you'll find out later when you find out that your daughter has testicles and male genetics. You'll find out later, oh, well, maybe it should be up to that person then to decide if they're male or female. I mean, like, look at the South African runner caster Semenya. At birth, they said, you're a girl. When she got into the Olympics, they said, no, you can't be a girl. She says, well, I'm a girl. And then finally, they kicked her out of the Olympics. Finally, they let her back in and said, you have to take hormone therapy. Your testosterone's too high. She's an XY female. So who's deciding? Was people telling her, you're a girl? Now they're telling you you're not a girl. I mean, in the end, you know, it should probably be up to her to decide. This person, Cori Koby, though, it goes beyond just intersex as a biological issue. And what to do with intersex people. They have their view and they want to apply it to everyone. I don't think it's going to happen, and I don't agree with their view. And I think that in the case we're considering 99% are going to identify with the gender they were decided to be at birth, perceived to be at birth. Creating another category and putting your kid in that category, it's the same. I mean, if this parent doesn't like the idea of the child being labeled as male or female because they might not like being in that category, well, to me, it's the same if you put them in the undefined category and say, well, I'm not undefined. I'm female or I'm male. To me, it's the same. You see what I'm saying? You're still labeling them. I think it makes more sense to just stick with male and female unless the person's intersex or they find out they're intersex later. Or maybe they have an intersex brain. You know, should you have to give them a scan for that? I don't know. There's no easy answers. But I think there is clearly such a thing as intersex. And I actually find it kind of disturbing to see people hating so much on transgender people because you don't know what's going on with them. Maybe they're just all intersex. So, you know, they didn't ask to be that way. And you don't know who's intersex and who isn't. So I think it's not right to be so judgmental of other people. I'm not saying that I think it's great to recommend to all young people who are confused about their identity that maybe they should have a different gender and they should start taking hormones. I don't agree with that either, because that's also dangerous, and sometimes they change their mind, and it's a big decision. And you know, I mean, it can be really dangerous for your health. So it's nothing to take lightly. It's nothing to have a trend over. It's not something you want to be trendy with. But for people who are genuinely intersex, I think they should just be allowed to be who they are, and I don't think anyone should direct hate at them or, you know, be mean to them. And I think in that area there needs to be some flexibility. That's what I really think. All right, so that's it. Let me know what you think, and thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.